Okay, we're ready.
All right, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the March 9th, 2022 full board meeting of Manhattan Community Board 6. My name is Kyle Athaide, and I am the chair of Manhattan Community Board 6. This meeting is being called to order at 7:02 p.m. Tonight, we are joined by Secretary Matt Bondi, District Manager Jesus Perez, Assistant District Manager Brendan Berth, and Community Associate Alexandra Crawford. In order to conduct an efficient meeting tonight, let's observe a few ground rules. First, no one may speak until granted the floor. CB6 members, if you have a question about board business or wish to make a motion, please first raise your hand through Zoom. The chat function should not be used for CB6 business or questions about agenda topics. Any and all such remarks should be made on the record by raising your hand through Zoom. Chat should only be used to alert us to any technical difficulties you are having or to state in writing information such as an email address that was already stated aloud on the record during the meeting. Next, when a member is given the floor to speak, I, as the chair, will first identify you, and then you can unmute yourself so that you can speak. We are required by New York State law to have a transcript of this meeting, so please keep all questions and comments succinct and germane to the discussion. And to the members of the public, if you wish to give remarks during the public session and have not already registered by filling out the form on the CB6 website ahead of time, you can register to speak in the public session by using the Q&A feature of Zoom and posting your name, affiliation, and the specific topic you wish to speak about. This must be completed by 7:15 p.m. The agenda for tonight's meeting was distributed ahead of time by the board office, was posted online, and appears on the screen before you. If there is no objection, we will adopt the agenda as stated. And board members, if you object to adopting the agenda, please raise your hand through Zoom. All right, seeing no objections, the agenda for tonight's meeting is adopted. We'll now move on to attendance.
Thank you, Kyle. All right, starting with Kyle Athaide.
Present.
Thank you. Asia Badi.
She's excused tonight.
Neil Barkley.
Present.
Marty Barrett.
He's excused tonight.
LV Barroso.
Present.
Claire Brennan.
You might be a few minutes late.
Okay. Jim Collins.
Here.
Stuart Desser.
Present.
Michael Devereaux.
Present.
Okay, thank you, Michael. Dan Devine.
Present.
Beatrice Disman.
Present.
Jeannie D'Onofrio. Jeannie. Okay. Charles Fernandez.
Present.
Eric Goldberg. Eric. All right, Andrew Gross. Andrew. Adam Hartke. Adam. All right, Molly Hollister.
She's not able to join us tonight.
Thank you, Jesus. Paige Judge.
Present.
John Keller.
Present.
Abigail Kruzmark.
Present.
Sandra Leftoff.
Present.
Anton Malner.
Present.
Kavitha Matthew.
Present.
Sandra McKee.
Present.
Richard Mintz.
Present.
Phil Napolitano. Philip. Okay, Rajesh Nayar.
Present.
Thank you. Kevin O'Keefe.
Present.
Stephen O.
Present.
Reshma Patel.
Present.
Thank you, Reshma. Matt Roberts,
Present.
Gene Santoro,
Here.
Lawrence Shayer,
Present.
Ann Seligman,
Here.
Lou Sapersky.
Yo.
Thank you, Lou. Seema Shah,
Present.
Sean Sherman. Sean? Okay, Sandro Sherrod. Sandro? Letty Simon,
Present.
Susan Steinberg,
Present.
Anju Suresh,
Present.
Mark Thompson,
Present.
Corinne Vanderdonk. Corinne? All right, Brian Van Nieuwenhoven,
Present.
Maura Wong,
Present.
Ronnie White,
Present.
Claude Winfield.
Present.
All right. We have a quorum. Thank you all.
All right, thank you, Matt. So I've asked all of our elected officials tonight to send over the reports ahead of time so that we can compile them. You can find all of the reports that were submitted to us on the CV6 website. The link to the reports was disseminated ahead of time to all board members and the general public, and for your convenience can be found in the chat now. I will now call on each of the elected officials who have RSVP'd so that they can take questions from CV6 members and the public about their pre-submitted reports. Each elected official will have 1 minute to field questions. If there are no questions, we will move on to the next elected official on our list. If an elected official has a time-sensitive matter to report on that didn't make it into their pre-submitted report, they will have 3 minutes to do so. During this part of the meeting, we will also hear from government agency representatives who have requested to address the board tonight. So first up, we are pleased to be joined by Manhattan Borough President Mark Levine.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. Hi, CB6. It's wonderful to see all of you again. I know that we're heartbroken by the tragic war in Ukraine, and you've probably seen that I've been speaking up about a way that New York City needs to be active in fighting back, because for too long we have been one of the favored safe harbors of those oligarchs, which are very close to Putin. They have a predilection for buying ultra high-end luxury properties here, and I've called for the federal government to add them to the sanction list, enabling those assets to be frozen, essentially seized, so that we can send a message to Putin and the world about New York City's stance on this horrible crisis. You've probably also seen that, together with your wonderful council member, Julie Menon, who's here, and also with my great friend Keith Powers, who might be joining us later, I have been advocating for the MTA to make our subway system safer by installing screen doors on platforms to prevent people from being pushed and tripping or attempting suicide or even dropping their cell phone. These are in place around the world. They should be in place in New York City. We want a big victory. The MTA is doing pilot now in 3 stations at Times Square, on the 3rd Avenue stop on the L, and 1 in Queens. But there are many in CB6 that the MTA has already deemed that they qualify for this technology, that it's feasible. And I would love to see you continue to push for this. There are, by my count, at least 10 stations in CB6 which have been deemed feasible for this technology. So let's push together to expand this pilot to cover many more places where this is so desperately needed. I've been sounding the alarm about the eviction crisis, which is mounting now, that housing courts are moving again. It's gotten so bad that we no longer have enough legal aid attorneys to cover all the eviction cases. This is in essence a violation of our commitment to offer right to counsel to tenants. So I've certainly been raising my voice to call for courts to not move any cases where the tenant does not have an attorney in an eviction proceeding. We have called for 1 million more trees in New York City, and we're getting great momentum on this. Would love CB6 to help think through where you would want more trees, in tree pits, in schoolyards, NYCHA properties, rooftops. Be creative. Would love to have your input. Finally, 2 administrative matters. We have extended the deadline for community board applications. You now have till March 15th. So if you haven't gotten your reapplication in, please do it. If you know other promising leaders who should apply, please tell them they have till the 15th. And finally, I know that you are very concerned about the expiration of the open meetings law, which allowed us to do meetings like this. I am too. I've actually been working with Senator Hoyleman to get legislation passed that would extend this accommodation. But in the meantime, I'm working to get out clear instructions to all the boards about what to do in the worst case in which we revert to pre-COVID protocols after the 15th. Again, I think you should have the option to do this how you feel fit, whether it is a hybrid in-person online, which I know many boards are opting for. So we're going to continue to push and keep you updated. So I'm going to stop there. Thank you, Mr. Chair. If there's any questions, happy to take them. If not, happy to move on.
Thank you, Board President. And actually, our board did pass resolutions in support of legislation like Senator Hoyleman. So
Great news.
please feel free to use us as a
We will.
starting point. We do have a couple of questions for you. So first up, we'll go to Board Member Jim Collins. Jim, go ahead. You're on mute, by the way.
Good evening, Mr. Borough President.
Hi, Jim.
How are you? I had a question. A lot of what there's been a lot of concerns about escalating rents within the city. And I know that for mixed use businesses or mixed use buildings that have small businesses as part of their rent base, the increased rents are in part due to the fact that many of these small businesses have not been able to make their rent. And as a result, there's probably billions in arrears. And I'm wondering if there's any consideration for soliciting federal funds in order to help those small businesses with those arrears, keep those and help keep the residential rents in the mixed use businesses down.
Well, these are really good points, Jim, excuse me. Of course, on the residential side, the state with federal money has created
The
a program,
ERAP, yeah.
ERAP, which has run out of money and there's a big push to replenish it, but it has put, I think it's over $2 billion out that can help tenants make up back rent, which is great for tenants and great for owners as well. On the commercial side, certainly restaurants they were a beneficiary of the last relief package, significant money for restaurant relief. It wasn't enough. And there's been a big push to get it replenished, which now appears to have stalled in Congress.
Mm-hmm.
I know that
most of that went, to maintain staff as opposed to assist the owners in making their rent payments and what have you. I just wanted to suggest perhaps your predecessor was gravely concerned about the number of vacant buildings.
Oh boy, so am I. I think we all are. It's gotten worse.
Vacant storefronts.
Far worse than COVID.
Right.
And luckily, I think your next speaker happens to be the chair of the Small Business Committee in the New York City Council. And looking forward to hearing her guidance on that. But I'm with you in this fight. We need to attack the vacancy problem. It saps life from our streets. It's a public safety issue. It's an economic vitality issue. And we need to use every tool we have, including helping to plug back rent holes that these commercial tenants are facing. So thank you, Jem, for raising that.
Okay. Thank you.
We also have a question from a public member. Brendan Jesus, could we get Alfred, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Go ahead.
Good evening. Good evening, sir, Mr. Levine. I'm a real estate attorney in the city, and I just had my question is, what can be done by the city and the state, which is controlled by Democrats up and down the ballot, to authorize more units to be built and actually have them built to address our housing affordability crisis? There's a lot of city-owned land. There's a lot of state-owned land. What is being done or is even being considered, if it's possible, to build on that land, affordable housing, to convert some city-owned buildings or state-owned buildings to residential use for tenants. The issues that NYCHA has been facing is decades old. And again, we have been, we're a democratic town, thankfully, and nevertheless, these problems continue to go unaddressed annually, every 10 years. And so, at what point are we finally going to say enough is enough, and we're going to start, buying buildings and converting them for residential use? We're working with developers to convert buildings and perhaps even providing tax breaks. I just think that, we have a serious inventory problem. The city and the state own a number of buildings and a lot of land, and
Absolutely.
why isn't any of that being?
Let me just jump in here. We have a desperate need to build more housing, especially more affordable housing in Manhattan, in New York City, in New York State. Desperate. If we don't, we're going to turn into San Francisco, where you have to be a millionaire to get an apartment. And I'm pushing really hard on this. This is a topic that would warrant a lot more than a short answer. But among the closer to home policies I'm pushing is for the city and state to facilitate conversion of some of the vacant Midtown office buildings into housing. This was a very successful strategy downtown after 9/11, which again I can refer to Councilmember Menon, who was very active in that. We need to do the same, particularly for the older Class B and C office buildings in Midtown, where there's a significant and growing vacancy. This is an opportunity to create housing. It is very difficult to do. It's expensive. From a regulatory perspective, also difficult. And so the government's going to have to facilitate that. And there was a program that was created by the state that put money on the table that has almost been untouched. We're going to have to improve the terms and put more resources into this. But huge opportunity to create affordable housing in neighborhoods that need it by converting this office space. And there's a variety of projects I'm working on around the borough that will add housing, which we don't have time to get into now. But it sounds like you are quite the expert. I'd be happy to connect.
Well, thank you.
On the side, I'm going to ask Brian Lafferty, who's my team member, who's here, to put our contact in the chat, and we can talk on the side about more good strategies you'd like to see us to pursue. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. I appreciate it, and it's an honor.
All right, I'm not seeing any more questions for you, Borough President. So thank you so much for joining us, and I'll see you tomorrow morning.
All right, thank you, Kyle. Thanks, CB6. Have a wonderful night.
Thank you so much. Next up, we'll go to Councilmember Julie Menon.
Hey everyone, thank you, Mr. Chair, and hello, CB6. It's so great to be with you, and it's great to be again with our wonderful Borough President. So I have a number of things to report on. Since I was with you last time, I have, as the Borough President said, been appointed the chair of the City Council Small Business Committee. I'm thrilled to take on this role. I'm a former small business owner. In the right after 9/11, I owned a small business before 9/11, and on 9/11, my business was devastated. And after, I formed a not-for-profit that was focused on helping small businesses recover. And then, as I mentioned to you, when I first came here, I chaired Community Board 1 downtown for 7 years. So I've worked for small businesses and with small businesses for many, many years. We have a small business crisis. I don't need to tell all of you that. We're going to need to utilize every tool in our toolbox. We are looking at lowering fines on small businesses. We're looking at creating a one-stop portal so small businesses don't have to deal with 10 different city agencies when they're dealing with various issues. We are definitely looking at the vacancy crisis. It's unacceptable, and cities across the country from Seattle to San Francisco have done really creative things on vacancies. And so I want us to do that here in New York. I also wrote an op-ed a couple weeks ago that was published in the Daily News to advocate that the city put money to under-resourced bids so that they could do more marketing and promotion to help their small businesses. So more news, and stay tuned for some more news on that to come. A couple other things things I wanted to report on. I did a walkthrough on the east side with Commissioner Ydanis Rodriguez, the DOT commissioner, and I pointed out intersections all up and down First Avenue that are absolutely unsafe. We have had too many deaths and injuries, and we have to focus on street safety. I gave the commissioner a list of 44 intersections in Council District 5 that I believe need to be immediately addressed with traffic calming measures to make them more safe. I also introduced my first piece of legislation the other week, which was a bill to regulate COVID pop-up sites. I started getting many complaints about this. People go into one of these pop-up sites, they're told they'll get their results in the next day or two. They never get the results, or they get them 2 weeks later after they've already infected loved ones, or they get false results. So my bill seeks to regulate that practice. I've also been working with the NYPD on the graffiti in the pocket parks, which has been, I know, a real issue in CB6. We received a lot of complaints about that. So we worked with NYPD to clean up that graffiti. Also, I am working on regulating 15-minute delivery apps. You might have seen them, GoPuff, Gorillas, a lot of other ones that are guaranteeing delivery of food items within 15 minutes. In my belief, as a longtime consumer protection lawyer and as a former commissioner of consumer affairs, I believe that practice violates the consumer protection law. It's endangering pedestrians, it's endangering the drivers, it's unacceptable. And so I'm working with some of my colleagues to regulate that practice. Can I just mention one thing? You're all invited to my inauguration, which is March 27th, Sunday, March 27th, 12 o'clock, 92nd Street. Well, I would love to see all of you there. Happy to answer any questions. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, council member. We do have a couple of hands up for you. We'll go to Paige. Paige, you're up.
Yes, I don't know if it was just a slip, but the council member said that she looked into CB5 and they had 44
CD5.
Where's CD6?
No, I said CD, Council District 5, CD, Council District, the council.
Right. I don't recognize, when I'm at CB6, I think of CB6.
Yes,
so how many in CB6?
Correct. So some of the intersections are in Community Board 6. I was talking about Council District CD, Council District 5. Some of them are in Community Board 8. Some are in Community Board 6. They go all along First Avenue. Some are on 3rd Avenue. I'd be happy to forward the Community Board a list.
Thank you.
Sure.
All right, we'll now move on to Jean. Jean, go ahead.
Yes, hi, Councilmember Menden, thank you for that. I was going to follow up on Paige's question, which you already answered, by asking that you forward those intersections that are on, they're in CD6, our district, our community district 6, so that we can follow up and see, because we have a couple of resolutions outstanding about intersections on First Avenue as well. So I'd be curious to see what your list contains.
Wonderful. So we basically took data on the intersections that had the most reported injuries and fatalities. So we wanted DOT to concentrate on that. The mayor has announced that citywide, he's focusing on 1,000 intersections that they're going to be improving and utilizing traffic calming measures on. So we gave a list of 44 intersections in City Council District 5. So yes, we will forward the list to the board. Absolutely.
Thank you.
All right, and I'm not seeing any more questions. So thank you so much, council member, for joining us.
Thank you so much. Great to see you all. Thank you.
All right, we'll next go on to council member Powers' office. Pat, are we going to be joined by the council member, or are you holding back?
I don't believe so. I don't believe he'll be making it tonight, unfortunately, but he does pass along his hellos to everyone. And if there's any, direct questions for him, I can always pass them along and get the information for anyone. I don't have anything additional to report myself. If there's any questions for me, please feel free to, share them. I can go into a little bit more detail. I know Ann had talked about before the meeting started the Grand Central Library stuff, but if you want to discuss that later, we can discuss that later.
So Ann actually has a hand up for you. So Ann, do you want to ask the question?
I do. It's actually not about the library. It's about the open restaurant program. And this is something that I see both you and Carlina had in the newsletters. And I I read through the legislature, and it is certainly very possible that I am missing something, but we're already having problems with restaurants that have moved or closed and sort of abandoning their structures. And what I see in there in the legislation, if I read it correctly, is that those the responsibility for that, basically you send a letter, if they haven't done anything in 30 days, the police can come and take it out. I think it would be a much better solution for the problem to kind of revert to the landlord. One, it would save the city money, and God knows the cops have other things to do, right? But the other thing is, going back to Jim's point about empty places, is that it incentivizes the landlords to rent those spaces out again sooner rather than later. And maybe they can get some kind of exemption if they have a contract but a restaurant hasn't opened or something like that. They don't have to remove it. But it just seems like it's such a complicated issue, and the legislature doesn't have a lot of nuance. So I don't know if somebody is here from Carlina Rivera's office too, but I know it was kind of highlighted in both your newsletters.
Yeah, speaking for our office, I can definitely get more info on that and pass along the suggestion as well to the council member, and we may possibly even set up a time to speak outside of this to kind of flesh out the idea and see if there's anything of note that we can possibly include.
Right.
Or
always happy to.
Yeah, absolutely.
And just as a reminder, our Business Affairs Committee is discussing this issue. It's being led by Anton, the Vice Chair. So I do suggest directing that to our Business Affairs Committee as well, who will be working with other committees on this as well. So, and feel free to reach out to them. All right, I'm not seeing any other hands up, so thank you so much, Pat. And if anyone has any further questions for the council member, please view Pat's information in the chat and feel free to reach out. Perfect, thank you. All right, we'll next move on to Councilmember Rivera's office. I believe we have Katie here.
Hello, everyone. So I submitted the sort of highlights, but I did also want to share that we will be having a tenant resource fair. It will be virtual, held via Zoom next Wednesday from 6 to 8 p.m. HPD will be hosting, and they'll have information about tenant protections broadly, but then also in relation to the pandemic. So if you're interested in attending, I'm going to put my info in the chat, and please send me an email and I'll send you the registration link.
What was the date of that? So I can write it down.
It's next Wednesday, March 16th.
Are there any questions for Councilmember Rivera's office? All right, seeing none, thank you very much, Katie, appreciate it. All right, we'll now move on to Assemblymember Court's office. I believe we have Alex.
Hi, everyone. Yes, Alex here from Assemblymember Court's office. One quick thing that I wanted to add, which I'm not sure was in our report yesterday, was that the Assemblymember participated in a press conference in Albany with our advocate partners at the Innocence Project and Vocal, calling for the passage of the Challenging Wrongful Convictions Act, his legislation, and for the inclusion of $10 million in the state budget to fund the Rights Council in those cases. Right now, New York is just one of 5 states that doesn't provide poor people seeking to overturn a wrongful conviction with an attorney. So if you want to learn more about that, please reach out. That's all from me. Happy to take questions and drop my email.
All right, thank you, Alex. Are there any questions for Assemblymember Court's office? All right, seeing none, thank you for including your information. And if anyone has any questions, please feel free to reach out to Alex. All right, we'll next move on to Brees from Assemblymember Gottfried's office. I think you're still on mute.
Sorry about that, everyone. I don't have a lot to report. The Assemblyman's been working hard on the budget. He did hold an in-person rally, or speak at one, I should say, on Monday, maybe it was yesterday. Been a long week already. Fair pay for home care. Home care workers, I think, as we all know, are dreadfully underpaid in New York. He's continuing to work on a lot of things. It's his final budget. He's kind of knee deep in that. We don't have a lot of community news to report. That's all. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much. Are there any questions for Assemblymember Epstein's office? Or sorry, Assemblymember Gottfried's office? All right, seeing none, thank you very much, Brees. We'll now move on to Assemblymember Epstein's office. Do we have Joanna here, I believe?
Yes. Hello, everyone. My name is Joanna Sanchez. I'm from Assemblymember Harvey Epstein's office. Assemblymember Epstein has been addressing bail reform and ending the 4-1 and passing good cause on eviction, along with protecting students from mandatory arbitration agreements, and along with shining light on immigrant detention centers. Other than that, we don't have much updates, but if anyone has any questions or concerns, feel free to contact our office. I will insert my information in the chat again. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joanna. Are there any questions for Assemblymember Epstein's office? All right, seeing none, thank you very much, Joanna.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Yeah. We'll now move on to Senator Hoyleman's office.
Hi, Kyle. Happy to be here. My name is Sam Vasquez. I'm with Senator Hoyleman's office, the new district manager. I just wanted to share a few updates. As you may know, Blackstone, the owner of Stuytown, is continuing their proposal to build two natural gas facilities, power plants in the development. This, is in a neighborhood that has already some of the highest pollutant levels in the entire city because of the 14th Street Con Ed plant, the FDR adjacent, and First Ave trucking route right there. The pollution, is contributing to health impacts in addition to environmental impacts. And so the senator is, along with all of our colleagues in government, are opposing this new proposal. We are introducing, they're trying to skirt DEC permitting process by lowering their emissions just below the DEC threshold. So we're introducing legislation soon to lower that threshold to make sure that they have to go through the permitting process. We want to make sure that, we're also highlighting the fact that we have strict mandates from the recent climate legislation we passed at the state level that mandates our energy production transition to green energy with a goal of 70% in 2040, I believe, in addition to a recent constitutional amendment passed by all New Yorkers statewide guaranteeing right to clean air. So because of all of those reasons, we think Blackstone should reconsider. And we've been working with the Tenant Association and our colleagues to help ensure that our neighbors have clean air to breathe. Other than that, I just have a couple quick updates about we've been working hard on the budget, but also introducing some legislation recently. I have a couple updates. Senator Hoyleman recently introduced a bill to create more transparency for LLCs. These are limited liability corporations that Russian oligarchs and shady landlords use to obscure ownership and get away with malfeasance. So we're looking to make that a more transparent system so that we can keep, both because of the Russian invasion and also back here at home, the landlords that obscure their ownership, looking to bring some light into that world, and also introduce a composting bill to help and make sure that all residential apartments throughout the city have curbside composting available. Those are just a couple highlights. You can read more about our legislative efforts in the report, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Sam. And if you can send whatever you have on those bills for Stuytown and the composting, so we can send it to our appropriate committees, would be greatly
Absolutely.
appreciated.
Happy
So
to.
thank you. Are there any questions for Senator Hoyleman's office? All right, seeing none. Thank you so much, Sam.
Thank you.
We'll next move on to Madeline from Senator Kruger's office.
Hi, Kyle. Hi, CB6. Senator Kruger, like many of her colleagues have mentioned, has also been in Albany working on the state budget, which we anticipate will pass at the beginning of April, working hard to make sure that the billions of dollars that our state allocates go to serve the needs of all New Yorkers. You can read a little bit more about that in our report, as well as a wide array of other legislative matters that are happening aside from the budget. And then tomorrow, Senator Kruger will continue a series that we've done for many years. We do it every year, part of our senior roundtable. I'm going to drop the RSVP link in the chat. Tomorrow's topic is Medicaid eligibility rules and strategies to help you access long-term care and protect your assets. So that'll be a virtual event tomorrow, Thursday morning from 10 to 11:30. I'm dropping the RSVP in the chat and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Madeline. I see that we have a hand up from Anne. Anne, go ahead.
Hi, Anne.
Hey, Madeline. I looked over the list of legislative accomplishments and it is very, very impressive. And like in all different areas, that's really great. One thing that and especially on the environmental stuff, which is very close to my heart. One thing that I did not see there that is a loophole in our environmental laws, and it may have been closed previously, but not the last time I checked. And that is that while we don't allow fracking in the state, we do allow the import of fracking wastewater, which is like pretty much like it's like one of the worst parts really of the fracking is the wastewater that results. And as of at least, like not this winter, but last winter, it was actually being used sort of instead of salt on roads upstate, like after a snowstorm, which is like exactly the worst thing you can do with it, right? Is like put it in an area where it can easily seep into groundwater. So I don't know. I wouldn't know how to go about looking even to see if that loophole had been closed, but
yeah, that is so concerning. I don't know off the top of my head. Let me do a little bit of research for you. And one of a staffer on our team is very involved in many of the environmental bills that were outlined in the newsletter, but he might have, more information about the fracking wastewater. But let's look into it. We can touch base tomorrow.
I will say also that this was an issue that I know Brad Hoyleman and his office was looking into like a few years ago. So
Can I jump in for a second?
Yeah.
So we actually passed this bill, and unfortunately, the governor vetoed it. So I just linked it in the chat. We know it's an important issue, and it's like you said, it's ridiculous that we're using this fracking fluid. But yeah, unfortunately, it was vetoed. So we're happy to take it up again, but we might have to make a more coordinated push. So we're happy to work with Senator Kruger as well and other allies in the community board to get it passed in future cycles.
Awesome.
Great.
Thanks,
Thanks, Sam.
All right. We also have a question from Jim. Jim, go ahead.
No, I was just wondering if that seminar will be available on at a later time on YouTube or whatever.
Yes. All of our virtual events are available on our YouTube channel.
Thank you.
It's posted on Senator Kruger's website, but then it just takes us a couple of days to get it up.
That's fine. Thank you.
Sure.
All right. Any other questions for Senator Kruger's office? All right. Seeing none. Thank you so much, Madeline.
Thanks, Kyle.
Next up, we'll go to Representative Maloney's office. Are we joined by anyone from Representative Maloney's office? All right, I think they were running late, so we'll just move on to our next speaker. We have Lingjun Chen from the District Attorney's Office.
Thank you, Kyle. Good evening, everyone. My name is Lingjun Chen from Manhattan District Attorney's Office. I don't have anything to add in addition to my report, but happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the District Attorney's Office? All right, seeing none, thank you so much, Lingjun. If anyone has any questions after, please feel free to reach out to her.
Yeah, I will drop my contact in the chat. Thank you, Kyle.
Next up, we have Bobby from Parks.
Good evening, everyone. How you doing? I wanted to just talk about a few things tonight. The first thing is that the NYC Parks Department has their online lottery for the summer camp. So the lottery is active right now. It goes until March 20th. And at that point, the lottery will be drawn and the participants will be chosen. It's $500 for the regular day, which is 9 to 5, and $575 for the extended day, which is from 8 to 6. So if you go on the Parks website right now, you can join the lottery. There's 5 recreation centers in Manhattan that has summer camp, including Constance Baker Motley, which is in CB6. And tomorrow at the Constance Baker Motley Recreation Center, there's a free jazz concert from 6:30 to 8 p.m. celebrating Women's History Month with vocalist Nikita White. And finally, at the end of the month, March 31st to April 2nd, the rec center is also hosting a 3-on-3 basketball generation tournament. So there's a little twist to it, basically 3 generations, families, child, adult, grandfather, mother can join and play in a little friendly 3-on-3 tournament. That's all I have for this month and for tonight. If anyone has any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
All right, thank you, Bobby. We actually do have a couple of questions for you. So first I'll go to Ronnie from the board. Ronnie, go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. I have a fun question. How is the campaign going for the lifeguard trainings? And also, are the facilities within our community board fully staffed? Thank you.
So lifeguard training is going okay. I was actually just on the call about that today. They're a little behind schedule, and I'm sure that has to do with a combination of applicants and the number of centers that are open right now, or at least with the time frames that they're open. So I know they're doing a quick start program this week at Chelsea. So that's going to hopefully speed up the process. In terms of staffing, I can only speak for Manhattan. I can't speak for the rest of the boroughs, but we are facing a staffing shortage. Pretty much every rec center is understaffed. That's why we have some limited hours in Manhattan. We're not open the normal hours that we used to be. So I don't know when that's going to be resolved, hopefully soon. But that's the staffing update for now.
All right, thank you. We have another question from Matt Bondi.
Thank you, Kyle. I just wanted to say that growing up, I was a New York City Parks Department lifeguard, and it was one of the greatest jobs I've ever had. It gives you great responsibility and it pays very well. So we should encourage, all of the children, not children, but the young people in the neighborhood to take advantage of that program, because they train you to swim, they swim better, they train you to save people, and they give you great responsibility and a sense of pride, which they did for me. So to the extent that, they have information that we could maybe disseminate to the public, I think it might be a good thing to do. I just wanted to get that across. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I know there was a big marketing campaign back in January. I'm sure I can have a flyer. I'm sure I still have that flyer. I can send it over to you guys if you guys want to promote it within. I actually sent you guys a bunch of flyers today, but I can do that tomorrow morning and send you that flyer for you guys to distribute.
We've been running the lifeguard flyer, the lifeguard recruitment flyer, our newsletter.
Okay, awesome.
All right, we also have a question from a member of the public. Matt, feel free to ask your question.
Yep. Hi, Bobby. Also a question around water safety. One of the things that I've noticed is along the East River, there aren't any along the promenade there for really long stretches of distance. There aren't any of those water safety rafts that you can find along the Hudson River. So if someone falls in, there's nothing to throw to anyone. And since a lot of that promenade is just a concrete facade, thought that would be something to call your attention to. I did reach out to the FDNY commissioner and they let me know that it actually falls under the Parks Department responsibility. I'm not sure if that's true, but I figured I'd take the opportunity to raise it here as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, your name was Matt?
Matt, Bobby, I'll actually jump in on that because that's not a recreation center issue.
Yep, it's not.
Yeah, so Matt, please actually reach out to the board office. We'll put our contact information in the chat and we can help assist you with that request, actually.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I'm not seeing any other questions for you, Bobby, so thank you so much for joining us tonight.
All right, thank you guys. Have a good evening.
And last but not least, I want to welcome former Councilmember Levin, who is now joining our district in a new capacity. So I want to give him the floor.
Hi, everybody. Good evening. Thank you, Kyle. I'm Steve Levin. I am the new CEO at Solar One. We run Stuyvesant Cove Park. Thank you. I joined Solar One 2 months ago after serving in the council for 3 terms from the other side of the river in Brooklyn. I represented from Greenpoint down to Brooklyn Heights area. And actually, Ann, I wanted to mention to you that I actually sponsored a bill in 2016 that banned fracking waste product in New York City. So in the 5 boroughs, it's banned. The bill was Intro 446 of 2016, or 2014, but it passed in 2016. Solar One's an amazing organization. If you guys don't know what we do, we're in addition to running Stuyvesant Cove Park and maintaining it, and we have that building there. We run K-12 education programs throughout the city. We do green workforce development and certification for hundreds and hundreds of pupils every year to do hard skills training and certification in green technology. And then we also do technical assistance in a program called Here Comes Solar to put solar onto rooftops of affordable housing or libraries or 1 to 4 family homes. So it's a wide breadth of programming that we do. It's an amazing staff. I'm really loving it so far, and really want to make sure that we're in close touch with the community board and the surrounding community. I will say, so we're like right in the middle of the ESCR project, and when I was in the council, I didn't pay any attention to ESCR because it was in a different borough, and I didn't want anything to do with it. But now I am immersing myself in it, and I will say one thing that's really concerning to me, and I definitely want to bring it to your attention, is we have gigantic sinkholes in Stuyvesant Cove Park. There are at least 2, and they're enormous. And DDC has said that, I was out last week with DDC and the general contractor, and they said that the scope of the work, I kid you not, in this $1 billion project, they're literally going to go around these 2 sinkholes that are in the park and just leave them the way that they are because they don't know what to do with them. And EDC apparently has not put the money in for that to be part of DDC's scope, and DDC can't unilaterally put it into their scope. And my suspicion, and this is going out onto the pier, the ferry pier, is that this is because there's the bulkhead is disintegrated in parts, and the East River just flows underneath the park. It creates sinkholes. There's literally, if you go out there on the pier right now, unless it's fallen into the river, there's one of these gigantic stone slabs that's like 2 feet by 2 feet by 4 feet, massive like granite stone that's just like hanging on a precipice, about to fall into the East River, while the wake of the ferry is just kind of like gonna eventually just wash it into the river. Meanwhile, it's so that's a huge concern for me. I'm bringing it to the attention of EDC because it's not safe. I mean, it's obviously not safe, and it would be crazy to redevelop this entire waterfront as part of this $1 billion infrastructure project and literally leave a couple of gigantic sinkholes, which seems nuts. So. Just one last thing, just that, our parks manager, Candace Thompson, is out there a lot, and we're definitely aware that there are issues around lots of garbage, unsanitary conditions, people are leaving soiled clothing, and all types of stuff like that, needles and a lot of that is underneath the FDR and really is the responsibility of EDC. And I'm trying to get to the bottom of like who's responsible, like whose responsibility it is to clean that up, get DSNY out there to be able to do that, because it's just not it's not safe for anybody, for park users or anybody that's is finding themselves homeless and is down there. It's not safe for anybody. So those are just a couple of the things. And then last thing, just our project, our building project, has been approved by OMB as a certificate, we got the certificate to proceed. So it's funded, and we should be moving forward on like procurement and then construction drawings to start moving forward, hopefully to have the building built by the end of 2024. So the existing building, we're gonna bring that down as soon as we possibly can, because it's not in great shape. And then we'll have a new, it's called the Solar One Environmental Education Center. It's going to have educational classrooms. It's going to be entirely solar one solar powered off of fossil fuels, and we look forward to that. So, and I'm definitely open to fielding any questions about that process, and it's great to get to know you all. Sorry to take so much time, but just wanted to introduce myself. Thanks.
Thank you. And we actually have a couple of questions for you. So we'll start off with Sandy. Go ahead.
I just wanted to let you know that you have already made an impact on our land use committee, and Larry Shire brought up the sinkholes. We're reaching out to EDC so we can get EDC and DDC to come together to our meeting, hopefully in April. We know it's a problem, and we figured unless we get both of those groups together, we're not going to get any satisfaction. We also are really interested in using that space under the FDR for something besides parking. So we're looking for you to help us support that push. And we'll talk more, I'm sure, but thank you.
That would be great. No, thank you very much. Thank you, Sandy.
All right, next up we have Gene. Gene, go ahead.
Right. Hi, listen, first of all, I'm on the land use committee as well. I'm chair of the transportation committee. I'm on the land use committee as well. So we're very much interested in this. And you're probably aware of this, but it's part of a larger pattern of sinkholes that basically encompasses the entire east side. We had them last year in the 30s. They were dealt with after a while. It's been going all the way up to like 125th Street on the east side. There's just sinkholes everywhere. So in context of your campaign to deal with this, it might be helpful, I don't know, to reach out to the other affected areas and see what's going on with them as well. So that was that part of it. And, really appreciate whenever you're going to be coming back, because park is a great loss for us. We don't have very much park space as it is. And this is it. As far as under the FDR drive and changing its function, I'm totally in support of that, but this is something else you may already know since you've been there for a couple of months. My understanding is that it's the fees from the housing cars under the FDR drive that goes towards supporting Solar One running Stuyvesant Park. That was what I was told by various EDC people and Stuyvesant people over the years. So if that's not true, that's great. That's a clearer path to changing the functionality of what's below the FDR. If it is true, there may be more of a problem. So I just wanted to raise that.
No, I appreciate that. I didn't know about the other sinkholes, and I wasn't aware of the source of the EDC funding. I know that we have a match with EDC, so we have a dollar for dollar match where we have to raise, and then they raise the funding for our management of the park. But I'll look into seeing, if it's tied directly to a revenue source from under the FDR.
Thank you.
I mean, it's a pretty bad scene under there, as I think you all know.
It's awful, and it's been awful for a long time, and it'd be much better being used for something else. But it's just a budgetary problem, if that's true, that I was concerned about dealing with, because otherwise we might as well run into the new retaining wall head first and just bang ourselves.
Yeah, no, understood. I'll find out and report back.
Thank you.
Great, and a last question from Larry Shire. Go ahead.
It's good to meet you, Stephen. I have long been a supporter of Solar One and a friend of Stuyvesant Cove Park. And as Sandy mentioned, I've been regularly bringing up this concern that you raised tonight about the deteriorated seawall. In fact, this goes all the way back to when they were scoping the ESCR project, and to have carved it out, going all the way back to that, and that's not acceptable. And maybe we as a board can have a resolution if you think that would be helpful and appropriate at this point. Please come to our Land Use and Waterfront Committee meetings, and let's continue the discussion. Thank you.
That would be wonderful. Thank you very much, Larry. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other questions for Stephen and Solar One? All right, seeing none, welcome to the district and looking forward to working with you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Nice to meet you all.
All right, so we are now in the public session. Jesus and Brendan, has anyone signed up to speak in the public session?
Yes, we have 4 registrants. The first one is, our first speaker is Ms. Lily Lopez, representing an organization called NY Connects. She wishes to promote a program for people with disabilities. Ms. Lopez, you have 3 minutes to make your remarks. You may begin. Ms. Lopez, if you're speaking, you are on mute.
All right, I think we can move on to the next speaker.
Can you hear me now?
There we go. Yes,
Can
we
you
can.
hear me? I apologize. Good evening, everyone. My name is Lily Lopez. I'm an outreach specialist for NY Connects, managed by a nonprofit. We connect people with any disability, any age, to services and resources. We have benefit counselors that can assist with the following: DRE and SCRE applications, rental assistance applications, benefits, Medicaid, or it can be based on people's needs. The program is completely free of charge throughout the 5 boroughs. And we are open Monday to Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. We are looking forward to assisting your community in any way we can during these difficult times. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lopez. We will now go to the next speaker. Next speaker is Matt McLeod, who is a resident of our district and who wishes to address the board on accessibility issues alongside East 25th Street between First Avenue and the FDR Drive. Mr. McLeod.
Hello, everyone. Yep, I'm back. Thank you for the opportunity to speak at tonight's Manhattan Community Board 6 meeting, and I hope everyone is safe and well. I'm speaking tonight to highlight 2 ongoing accessibility issues on East 25th Street between First Avenue and the FDR. The first issue is the pedestrian bridge over the FDR at the end of East 25th Street. The bridge has no accessibility ramp, no safety railings. The stairs are very deep and difficult to navigate, and there is no noise abatement as one crosses the FDR. The second issue is that there are multiple deep holes in the sidewalk, about 2 to 3 inches deep, all along the front of CUNY's Hunters College Brookdale campus. These holes make it impossible to use the sidewalk with any type of mobility impairment. This issue is worsened by the fact that a city bike docking station also blocks half of the sidewalk near First Avenue. Because the sidewalk is in front of city-owned property, I believe it is the city's responsibility to maintain it. I'm raising these 2 issues to the Community Board 6 as I am concerned that we are impeding accessibility along this passageway, which is used by thousands of people every day to access the waterfront, schools, and residences. Hunter College is also used as a city voting site. This is our community, and I believe it is our responsibility to look out for each other. My ask of Community Board 6 is to help advocate in any way that you can to help resolve these issues as quickly as possible. Thank you again for your attention and for the opportunity to speak.
All right, thank you.
Jesus.
Yes.
It's Gene. I have something to say to Matt if that's appropriate.
Well, that's for the chair to decide.
Okay. Kyle, is that okay if I speak?
Yep, go ahead.
Okay, yeah, regarding the 25th Street Bridge, because we have an outstanding reso from several years ago to replace that bridge with something that's got accessibility. And what we've been told repeatedly as we followed up over the years is that it's on DOT's scheduled list of bridges and such structures to replace. And it has a place, it's on that schedule and it'll come around. So we have actually pushed for this. We're very aware of the problem. And that's been the response we've gotten from DOT. We can certainly push at them again, but I just wanted you to know what the background was.
That is helpful context. That is also the same response that I have received from the Department of Transportation when I've reached out with this issue.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. Okay, well, wish us all good luck. Thank you, Matt.
Thanks so much.
For Gene and for the board members, just as a quick FYI, in the budget request Airtable, we've updated the most recent agency responses, and DOT has said fiscal year 25 is what it looks like. So fiscal year 2025 begins on July 1st, 2024. So that's still 2 years away. If Senator Hoyleman's office is working with Waterside on this, maybe there's opportunity for cooperation. But I'll leave that there for now. All right, the next speaker is Teresa Smalley, a resident of our district who wishes to speak on funding parity for 853 schools, which provide services for students with disabilities. Ms. Smalley, you will have 3 minutes to make your remarks. You may begin.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for hearing me today. This is an extremely important issue for me and my family. I just want to tell you the story of what my daughter experienced as a diagnosed dyslexic, and she now currently is an 8th grader at the Churchill School in our district. We were very fortunate for Estelle to receive a CBST referral to attend a state-funded public school because the school she had attended was unable to meet her needs. During her time in public school, Estelle went from being a gregarious and happy student who was fortunate to have really caring teachers who believed in her and supported her. She was obviously very bright and had strong verbal abilities at a very young age, and this hid the fact that she had a serious language-based learning disability, which mostly affected her in reading and writing. Both my husband and I, along with Estelle's teachers, believed early on that her reading and writing skills were just delayed, and one day it would just click and she would catch up. Unfortunately, she continued to fall further and further behind grade level requirements, and by second grade, she was still reading and writing at pre-kindergarten level. We got her a tutor that specialized in dyslexia, and I worked with her daily on homework assignments that she was completely incapable of doing on her own. She was acutely aware of how far behind her classmates she was. While they were moving on to the exciting worlds of chapter books, Estelle was struggling with early reader books. She was beyond frustrated and became withdrawn. Even though she was in an ICT class, in third grade, she had teachers who were woefully incapable of teaching her or appreciating all that she had to offer. She was made to feel dumb and sent out into the hallway to read with another classmate. Both girls were not yet able to read independently, so instead of working with them, the teachers sent them out to read kindergarten level books aloud to each other. It was dispiriting to say the least. Fortunately, Estelle's second grade teachers, who still were in contact with her, and the school psychologist, and even the principal, could all see that it was the school that simply could not meet her needs. And after this was confirmed by a psychoeducational evaluation, it was determined that Estelle needed to learn in a different environment, that her current school simply did not have the resources to provide for her. Estelle transferred to the Churchill School in the 4th grade, and it literally saved her life. When she came there as a fully funded student, she was still reading and writing at kindergarten level. Her math proficiency was at the 4th grade level, and her verbal evaluation put her on par with a 10th grader. When she toured Churchill, she was so excited to see there was a school made up of kids just like her. I nearly cried when the wonderful director of admissions at Churchill told us that Estelle looked to be a perfect candidate and that we would never have to have screaming and tears over homework again. It was amazing how right she was. Over the past 4 years, Estelle's growth has been astounding. After years of tortured homework sessions, she has been so happy to be able to do it on her own. She takes so much pride in her work, and she has consistently been an A student. We just completed her IEP meeting yesterday. She's currently reading at a 6th grade level. I'm so sorry, I'll be quick. But she is on grade level in math and history and science. And like so many other kids with learning disabilities, she's incredibly creative and loves art. In the fall of 2019, Churchill announced that they would no longer take state funding for incoming students. I am speaking today because there is an immense need for schools like Churchill to continue to be able to save kids who have lost all hope in themselves. And unfortunately, now that education is pretty much out of reach. I know this intimately because, again, I find myself needing to find a proper education for my younger son. He's 7 years old and he attends PS 40 on East 20th Street. I'm so sorry, I'll be one more minute. Unfortunately, he began showing signs of a learning disability in preschool. And having learned from my experience with my daughter, I've been working closely with his teachers to get him the extra help that he needs. And last spring, we had another evaluation done for him. And not surprisingly, he is also dyslexic. This year, he's in an ICT class with 2 teachers for 27 students. His teachers are truly wonderful, and he is very slowly making progress, but he is far behind where it's been determined he should be at this point in 1st grade. We received a mandatory letter from PS4.
Molly, can you get to the request, please?
Yes, okay, so they're saying that he might stay back. And I've been trying to apply now to Churchill for him or find like schools like that. There is nothing available in the area. I've been told that we need to apply to a school in Long Island. There's one in New Jersey that accepts kids in 3rd grade, starting in 3rd grade. Basically, what I'm saying is that when the state funds schools, which is what we're urging the legislature and the governor to do, they were paying $36,499 to Churchill per student. That is way below what Churchill can afford to keep qualified teachers on staff. So now parents have to sue to get to be reimbursed, maybe reimbursed for the $67,000 tuition. And it's just putting this education that is so desperately needed completely out of reach for our city kids. I'm sorry it took so long.
All right, thank you, Ms. Molly. I'm actually sending you my email in the chat. So if you could reach out to us, we can possibly get something on our youth and education agenda. All right.
Just as a reminder, there is a resolution on this very topic later in the evening under the Youth and Education business report.
Thank you.
The next speaker we have is Ms. Melissa Payne Furtado, who is also a resident of this district and wishes to speak to the board on the very same topic as the previous speaker. Ms. Payne Furtado, you have 3 minutes to make your remarks. You may begin.
Hello, everyone. My name is Melissa Payne Furtado. I am not a member of this district, but I am calling to voice my support for the resolution that will be presented this evening in support of equal funding for 853 schools. My son attends an 853 school, the Reese School. Reese has been instrumental in helping my son address his learning challenges. If Reese was a private school or was to become private, I would never be able to afford the annual tuition that exceeds $60,000. I strongly support equal funding for 853 schools. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Payne Furtado. That concludes our speakers list tonight.
All right. Thank you, Jesus. We'll now move to the adoption of the previous meeting's full board minutes. The minutes from the February 9th full board meeting were distributed to board members ahead of time by the board office. If there is no objection, we will adopt the minutes from that meeting. So board members, if you object to adopting the minutes, please raise your hand through Zoom.
I see Ronnie's, okay, Ronnie's hand was raised, but
Yeah,
not raised anymore.
Was that an objection, Ronnie, or no?
No, sorry.
No worries. All right, seeing no objections, the minutes from the February 9th full board meeting are adopted and they will soon be available on the CB6 website. All right, I'm now going to deliver the chair's report, and I'm going to do it a little differently this time because I'm actually going to do it in tandem with our district manager, Jesus Perez. I'm going to focus it solely on a topic that we heard about earlier tonight from the Manhattan Borough President about the expiration of the Zoom option for the open meetings law. As we heard and as we know, the expiration date is the 16th. We have not received any further guidance on whether it will be extended or not at this time. We are past the point of debating the merits of what are the pros and cons of working through Zoom, because we do need to figure out a way to move forward. As everyone knows, we sent out a survey so that we could capture this data as to how the board members are feeling about this particular issue. I want to thank everybody for, first of all, participating and engaging and sharing your thoughtful comments on this. And we will be sharing some of that data tonight. The issue is that almost 50% of the board would like to remain on Zoom, with about another 30% not caring which way it goes. Only about 10% of this board did want to meet in person. The issue that presents to us is that going forward after the 16th, we are presented with two different paths. We can try to meet in person, which presents several problems. We do not necessarily have venues to hold full board meetings. Committee meetings can probably be held in our board office, but anything after a certain amount of people does not allow for any real public engagement with the amount of space that we have. And using outside venues, some of them are still not allowing groups of people to come in. And with any community board meeting, we do not have the authority to require certain public health guidelines of anybody who attends. So there does present that challenge. The other option that we have is that we can continue to meet on Zoom, which would be in violation of the open meetings law if it is not extended at that point. It would allow for us to technically meet a quorum. The data does show that we are at risk of not making quorums for any of our meetings if we now mandate it to be in person because of the flexibility and adaptability that it provides. Some members even shared through the survey that a requirement to solely meet in person might affect their ability to serve on the board, given that the pandemic has presented a number of challenges and responsibilities that we do have to meet, which is not currently reflected by not having an option to join remotely. So we do have to discuss this. We will have an in-depth discussion about this at our executive meeting next week, where we will decide as executive leadership how we want to proceed with our meetings going forward. But I did want to share with the rest of the board and encourage you to attend that executive committee meeting where we can discuss this in further detail. But I do want to pass it on to Jesus at this point, so we can go a little bit more into detail about this survey and about our options going forward.
Thank you, Kyle. Let me share my screen. And thank you to those who participated. Almost everyone on the board participated. We tried sending multiple emails, but we got almost everyone. As Kyle mentioned, in the end, over half of the board would prefer to meet on Zoom. And once you take into account the people who don't really have any strong preference either way, 80% of the board would be happy meeting on Zoom. Unfortunately, it's not really up to us. It's up to the state. As you heard earlier from the borough president, there is legislation that is being considered that would lift the requirement to meet in person. It would allow boards to meet on Zoom entirely if they wish. Legislation A08134 by Assemblymember New, and then S7261 sponsored by our very own Senator Hoyleman. There are differences in the language in both of these bills, but in the end, the effect is supposed to be the same, to allow community boards to meet on Zoom. You'll notice in the survey, we didn't really poll on a hybrid option because, that would have been the popular compromise. The problem with the hybrid option is that it presents certain technological and operational logistical problems that are not necessarily easy to surmount. And at least right now, legislative problems, because the hybrid, and even if we had a funding and expertise to set up and the space to set up a wonderful hybrid setup, that setup applies only to the public. It does not yet apply to the members unless you are willing to let strangers come into your house and view your Zoom from there. So the hybrid option is not really a realistic option right now. As far as people's comfort attending meetings, we got back, forgive me that we had a little glitch here. This yellow slice, 56%, is the number of members who are comfortable attending meetings so long as we have safety precautions. The problem is that at the time that we did this, we didn't really have a lot of current information, which we've gotten just today, just this evening. A letter was sent by the borough president to all the chairs and the district managers, and it effectively, they sought guidance from the city's law department. And we learned a few things. We learned that we as the board cannot require vaccination. We cannot require masks as a condition of attendance. There is some wiggle room in that if we happen to find a venue that requires and polices these things, then they can do it, the board cannot. So essentially, if we meet in person, we're going to have to let anyone come. It was only about 33% of the board that was comfortable attending meetings without any safety measures at all. So not a majority. But so it'll and we had about 20% or so who were uncomfortable attending the meetings at all at this time. Now, I don't know if that really means, for example, for those people who answered that way, does that mean that over my dead body, I will not attend a meeting if it has to be in person? I don't know. I guess that's a question that you as members have to ask yourselves. But yes, as Kyle mentioned, it'll be an interesting discussion at exec, and hopefully those members that are free and interested can attend. Essentially, the question boils down to this. Essentially, can we go back to in person? You know, if you set aside all the health concerns, that set that aside. Yes, I mean we did it for decades. Assuming someone will let us in somewhere, we can meet in person. Can we meet in person while still keeping the Zoom and the live stream and the archive of videos on YouTube and all that stuff? That is very, very, very up in the air. So, a question that the board should ask itself is, how much do these matter to you? I think that these are really, really great things that a public body should have available to itself in 2022. We have not polled residents of our district, but I would imagine they feel very similarly. That said, all that stuff takes staff, it takes money, it takes resources that we can control, venues that we can control. It just can't be materialized out of thin air. So we've got some decisions to make in the coming days. But that's that. Unless there are any questions on that, I actually want to switch gears a little bit to something else that's more sort of housekeeping stuff that we've been getting questions about. The question of emails for board members. So
Jesus, before we move on, I think we have a couple of questions about open meetings. So so Letty, go ahead.
Thank you. Two questions. My first question is, what is the exact number of responses? How many board members out of the 50 responded, please? And the second thing is, just in my own opinion, that we should be guided by what we get in writing from either the borough president's office or corporation counsel.
We had 46 respondents.
That's a great number. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Yep, no problem. Thank you for the question. Next up, Claire.
Hi, I'm just wondering if there has been conversation between other boards. I know, Kyle, I think you meet with other folks who lead Manhattan boards, and is it kind of a group effort, or is there chatter about what other boards are thinking at this time?
So yeah, as you recall, actually when this was first reverted at the end of last year's calendar year, June of last year, CB6 actually led. We were the first public body to make an issue of this, that that removing the Zoom actually went against the spirit of the open meetings law, because it provided so much access into community boards based on time, flexibility, things of that nature, recordings that people could go back to and actually view a meeting if they were unable to make it. All of the Manhattan community boards were part of that letter requesting that there be a Zoom option as well, except for one community board in Manhattan. But this was actually continued throughout the city. As many may recall, after that lift was removed, several community boards actually ended up being exposed to COVID and got into some pretty dangerous territory, and they themselves started writing letters together. So I believe it was Queens, their community boards came together to talk about this as well. That was obviously a different time in terms of pandemic, where we were still in it. Not everybody was vaccinated. We had various strains going on. We're in a little bit of a different situation now. Our board, again, is still the first board to have supported the legislation for a virtual option. I think that's something that kind of gets lost in the discussion, is that it doesn't mean that it replaces one or the other. It just allows the board to utilize options that fits the needs of their members. There have been discussions. This is actually something that's going to come up at the next borough board meeting. That's why the borough president actually sent it right before we began this meeting. So I haven't had, I was able to see a couple of the bullet points, but I will share that with the executive committee so that we can prepare for that next week. And anybody else who would like to participate in the discussion, we'll look at it together at the executive committee. But many of the boards feel very similarly that there should be an option. So there have been internal discussions, but nothing that has been brought up at borough board so far. But many of the Manhattan community boards are in a similar position. Their committees may not have discussed this at length as we have. So they may not be able to publicly state any opinion on behalf of the board that hasn't been voted on or formalized through a resolution. But just in internal discussions, there is a lot of similar feelings on this going forward, that there should be an option.
As Kyle alluded to, yes, all the community board chairs meet once a month to discuss issues of the boards. All the district managers, conversely, also meet on a different day every month to discuss similar issues. And this has been a topic of conversation. Promoting CB6's resolution on this that we passed several months ago now. I have tried to drum up support from other boards to pass their own. I haven't seen really anything come out of that. But at this point, the boards are sort of planning for any contingency. And some of them, on the whole, the thinking is they're going to try and adhere to the open meetings law as much as they can, but they're under no illusions that it will be, an off-on switch where on the 17th, everything will be perfectly compliant, because it may not be. And so some boards, if they just can't make it work, they'll just be on Zoom and try to see how it shakes out. And those that can comply will. So that's where we are right now. As far as support, we're getting some support from the borough president's office as much as they can. But again, they can't snap their fingers and materialize things that don't exist. Beyond that, no real help from the state, no real help from the larger city apparatus at large. So that's where we are. Every board is kind of doing this on their own.
Yeah, and I will remind that there is this trend of hearing about renewals the day before they're set to expire, which isn't very helpful to how we organize our meetings way ahead of time. But this, again, is something up for discussion at next week's executive committee, where even if we did find a location that allowed a mass group of people to come in, because remember, there are still issues with that we have no control over, and we can't dictate an organization or institution's use of their space, since we are asking for favors. But even if we did get that, there is no guarantee that we would have quorum to have an official meeting based on the data that we have received. So this is something to take in consideration as well, but we will get into discussions about the options that we have at exec. But let's move on to some other comments, and then we'll move on to Jesus's next topics. And again, I know this is obviously a juicy topic, but we will save this at next week's executive committee, which we will be holding virtually, just so you know. So B, you're up. You're on mute still, B.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
So you actually articulated what I was going to do, and I was going to ask Jesus the question. When we obtain meeting rooms, they tended to be in hospitals. They tended to be in facilities that still have restrictions, as to who could come in and being masked and all of that. So I was wondering, Jesus, whether we even took a survey of the facilities that we've used in the past, and whether or not we would even have the option of meeting there. Because if I went through the list of all the centers and places, I would say most of them would say no to us. So unless you're going to get a budget that's going to allow us to rent space, I think the physical environment is going to cause us not to be able to do it, besides the survey of people, whether we make a quorum or not.
Some of those connections with those former venues have dried up, and I'm trying to reestablish them. Some of the venues, for other reasons not related to the pandemic, are not going to be as available, if at all. And some I'm sort of in the works to sort of try and see what the status is. So yes, we recognize that a lot of them have been, given that our First Avenue corridor is a health sciences and hospital corridor. A lot of the spaces were in medical or medical adjacent facilities. So we will see. That's all I can really say at this point. We will see. There is some money in the budget to rent space. We have rented space before, typically at the Japan Society. We do have a little bit of flexibility with the budget. We're very fortunate in that regard. Some boards are not, but whether that will be a sustainable option for full board, probably, if we had to. Given that we have 12 meetings that happen, one of which is full board and the rest are committees, where some boards out in the boroughs have like 2 all month. That is not a sustainable option for all those. We will probably have to make use of the office where we can better control conditions. But again, social distancing will be difficult unless we get vast rooms. And even in the letter that Kyle alluded to, that I alluded to from the borough president's office, social distancing, while we can't mandate masks or vaccinations, social distancing, we had some wiggle room, but there seems to be some language there that seems to make it dependent upon whether it's a guidance from CDC or the health department from the city or the state, suggesting that if they don't think it's warranted, then we can't impose that either. So there's sort of those policy obstacles, as well as just the hard reality of, will we even be able to find a space that big?
Thank you. And then we'll go to Susan and we'll end it there. If anyone has any additional comments, please email us or join the executive committee meeting next week. So Susan, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I actually have a question. What would be the practical consequences if we continue to meet on Zoom in violation of the open meetings law? What would they do? Dissolve our community board?
No. Nothing that's...
You can answer it, or?
Oh, if you want to answer it, you can.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I was just going to say there's nothing criminal about doing that. We wouldn't be in any criminal trouble or anything like that. The only thing that could happen from continuing to meet virtually is the same. We were actually in this exact same position last year when we were in the middle of the pandemic, where we actually continued to meet through Zoom for several meetings, except for ones that we really felt needed to be in person and verified. The issue is that if someone were to complain about it, that we were meeting on Zoom, that they could challenge the validity of any of the resolutions that we passed in that meeting. So whether it's a committee meeting, whether it's a full board meeting, if there were positions that we took through resolutions, it could become invalidated. And that is the risk of that.
Okay,
so
thank you.
Yeah, so again, that's something we can discuss next week and weigh the pros and cons about what kind of approach makes sense going forward. And Jesus, do you want to add anything to that?
There is the small likelihood of potentially being sued. I don't know, we have never been sued for anything, but the penalties could be, for example, legal fees for the other side. But again, that's, at least for us, is uncharted territory, and but there's that likelihood. But most likely what would happen is that someone would complain, and as Kyle said, invalidate actions that we've taken, or we'd get sort of a letter from the Committee on Open Government out of the New York State Department of State. They don't have any enforcement powers, but they can guide agencies and public bodies to adhere to the laws as they are written. But no, our board would not be dissolved. No one would be put in Zoom jail. None of that.
Yeah. All right. So let's move on with the rest of your report, Jesus. And again, if anyone has any further questions, of course, you can reach out to me, continue the conversation. But I highly encourage you to come to next week's executive committee, where we'll have a more robust discussion on this. And to those who are on executive committee, I will be sending you that letter so that we can stew on this for the next week.
All right, thank you. And the last thing I want to mention, because it's something that comes up every once in a while, emails. So we have gotten some questions from board members about why we do not release a list of board member emails as we used to do several years in the past. That practice sort of fell out of favor for various reasons. And while back in pre-pandemic days, it may not have been such a big deal because you were able to see each other and to exchange information if you wanted to. In the Zoom era, it's a little bit harder because contact is more regulated, and you can't always just casually happen upon someone and ask for their email address or their phone number. So one of the things that made it complicated for sharing these is that the city has an identifying information law that restricts how agencies can disseminate identifying information of various kinds, names, emails, addresses, phone numbers, among them. And so, our interpretation was that it was pretty tight and that we shouldn't just be emailing, we shouldn't be providing these emails out willy-nilly. If you've heard us say, hey, when you're emailing a committee, please BCC everyone. If you've noticed that all our emails to all of you, all our mass emails to all the board members, they're all BCC'd, that's why. We reached out to the New York City Department of Data Privacy and asked them, are we being over careful in our interpretation? They said, we are not, that is how they would interpret it as well. That said, they alerted us to a provision in the law that said that if the data release is in furtherance of the mission of the agency, then there's some flexibility there. I myself, now in the past, we've had some issues with folks maybe spamming other board members and sending them things that board members maybe didn't want to receive. We'll certainly, hopefully not have issues like that now, and we'll certainly put some ground rules for how these names and emails should be used. But I can see, and I've spoken with Kyle about this, he sees that certainly having the board members having the ability to reach out to each other, to contact each other on a limited basis does further the mission of this agency. It makes sense to have a list like that. So we're going to bring it back, but the way we're going to do it is we're going to do it once the new members are seated, because it's hopefully not too long from now. We're going to send an email out to everyone saying, this is the list, this is the information it's going to have on it. Are you okay being on this list? We will have 2 weeks for everyone to sign in, to opt in, and those at that point that do not opt in, they're not on the list, and that's that. And so hopefully we won't have to have consternation or worrying about this list ever again. But so that's in the works, so don't fret. If there are any questions about that, I'm happy to take them, but if not, I will conclude my report.
Thank you, Jesus. And just as a reminder, there will be strict guidelines about how that is used, and I'll detail that for everybody. And I'll detail that for everybody. So please do not abuse that. Yeah, Maura, do you have a question?
Yeah, hi, thanks. I'm just curious if there has ever been discussion of providing CB6 emails so that we all have sort of the same email, which we might feel more comfortable distributing amongst the group.
There has, at the borough president level, actually, many years ago, there has been, the borough president's office tried to get city emails for all community board members. It did not go anywhere. They tried and tried and tried, and it didn't go anywhere. You guys can't really have the .gov email addresses that city employees have because you're not city employees. You're city officials, but not city employees. You may notice, though, that CB6 staff do not use .gov email addresses. We use .org. That's because before I got here, the board was moved by a previous chair onto this email system that we have now. And so that's why we have a different suffix to our emails than other agencies do. We could potentially, in theory, add everyone onto the board, but there's a cost to that because these emails would not be free. It really, I think it might add more work to the board. I mean, occasionally we get people saying, I can't find my Zoom link, I can't find this, I can't find that. If we have to then worry about password resetting and things like that, it might ultimately be more trouble than it's worth. But again, there would be financial costs and things like that to that. Mostly what is recommended to board members is that if they're uncomfortable sharing their personal email address with their 49 other colleagues, that they can create a CB6 specific email just for that purpose. That is what other board members have done. Thank you.
All right. And Jim, do you have a question about this?
No, I had a statement actually. Perhaps the office can look at the web hoster company that does the .org site. My provider, which is HostGator, allows an unlimited number of email accounts, and my monthly fee is for business fee is $16.95 a month. So it might be worthwhile to take a look and see what the limits of the website host will permit.
All right, Jim. Yeah, if you could send that over to us, that'd be helpful.
All right.
All right, thank you. All right, we'll now move on to our board treasurer, Brian Van Nieuwenhoven, who will give us a report.
Hi, our numbers hardly moved this month. I filed a written report with the minutes. I'm waiving my verbal report.
All right, thank you, Brian. We've now arrived at our committee reports and resolutions, and in order to conduct an efficient meeting tonight, I'm going to remind everybody about the ground rules we discussed before. First, no one may speak until granted the floor. Please raise your hand first. Board members, if you have a question or wish to make a motion, again, please raise your hand through Zoom first. The chat function should not be used for board business or questions about agenda topics. Any and all such remarks should be made on the record by raising your hand through Zoom. The chat should only be used to alert us of any technical difficulties you are having, or to state in writing information such as an email address that was already stated aloud on the record during the meeting. When a board member is given the floor to speak, I will first identify you. And to members of the public, please note that during this session of the meeting, we only take questions from members of the board. And last but not least, we are required by New York State law to have a transcript of this meeting. So please keep all questions and comments succinct and germane to the discussion. Tonight, we are again using a digital ballot. The CB6 staff will now post a link to the ballot in the chat. Please click on this link and open your ballot, or copy and paste the link into your browser. Select your name from the list of board members and select your vote on each resolution as it is presented. Do not hit submit until later in the evening after the final resolution has been presented and when I have told you you can do so. At the end of the meeting, once you have indicated all of your votes on your ballot, only then should you submit the ballot. You will not be able to submit the ballot unless you vote on every resolution. If you plan on abstaining, please select abstain, and final vote counts will be announced after the second roll call, so please remain for that. If any part of our voting procedure is unclear, please raise your hand through Zoom and we will address your question, or feel free to chat with our board staff to get the help that you need. All right, so let's get started. The first committee we have is the Bylaws Committee B. Go ahead.
Thanks, Carl. To let the board know, our committee met last Thursday, which was the 3rd of the month of March. We did something very specific articles, and Sandra actually led the discussion. We did Article 2, which is board offices, Article 3, which is election of offices, and Article 4, which is terms of office. And when I said we did that, I meant we went over them, came up with ideas, reviewed the recommendations of the executive committee, and also to let you know that 8 individuals, when we sent out the survey to the board, also provide us with individual comments. Each of our sessions we are dealing with very specific articles. The next meeting is the first Wednesday in April, and we'll be doing Article 1, which is membership, Article 9, which is removal for cause, Article 5, which is executive committee, and Article 8, which is board committee. With each member of the committee has responsibility for leading the discussion on specific articles. We are also marking up the bylaws and are going back to it to see if that's the intent and how it holds all together. So I look forward to letting you know where we are again after the next meeting. Thanks, Carl.
All right, thank you, B. Thank you for your leadership and to the rest of the committee for their work on this. Are there any questions for the committee? Yes, I see a hand from Lou. Go ahead.
Is that meeting going to be on Zoom, B?
I hope it's on Zoom.
We'll discuss that next week's exec about how best to proceed.
Could the results of that conversation be emailed around to the board members so that we're all aware of what's going on?
You're talking about after exec, Lou?
Again, I didn't hear you.
I said, were you referring to the discussion at the executive committee about how to proceed?
No, I was talking about the bylaws committee.
Well, the bylaws committee doesn't have any findings yet. We're working through this. It's preliminary. There will be there are minutes that are taken of the meeting. And so we are in our deliberative position at this point in time.
Mm-hmm.
And Lou, at least until March 16th, all videos of all meetings can be found on our YouTube page.
Yeah, so you can review that, and another example of why Zoom meetings are very helpful for a lot of people. Okay, we'll now move on to the next committee since I do not see any further questions. Gene, go ahead.
Sure. Hi, folks. So first up, we have a resolution. It's very straightforward, very simple. The Iberostar Hotel was forced to close at the beginning of the COVID pandemic 2 years ago. When they closed, DOT took down the hotel loading signage. They're now reopening and they would like that back. The committee discussed it, has no objections. DOT was there, they're fine with it. And so that's the background for the reso. Like I said, pretty straightforward. I want to thank Ronnie especially, who stepped up to write the reso, which since we saw this stuff on Monday night, and he had a quick turnaround to the office on Tuesday, she did some terrific work. So thank you, Ronnie. Anyway, that's it for that. Let's, that's the reso.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Oh, sorry, can remember, raise your hand, please, so I know who's talking. Can the people who do that? Yes, Lou?
Call the question.
Thank you. Is that seconded by anyone? Sandy?
Second.
Seconded. All right, everyone, please go to their digital ballot and mark their vote for 2A. And once you have done that, please do not hit submit. And to those of you who are using the digital ballot, who are not using the digital ballot, we will ask for your vote verbally during the second roll call. All right, so while people do that, do you have a report, Gene?
Yes, I do. So you all got to hear some of our upcoming focus going to be tonight from our council member and a borough president. The MTA subway grates, we actually had a reso, if I remember correctly, some years ago during the L train shutdown and planning. That was 3rd Avenue then was supposed to be a pilot program for this sort of gates, and we supported that. So we'll be discussing those things, it'd be 10 subway stops in the district and see what the borough president has in mind, what MTA has in mind. DOT as well, we have the same sort of thing on First Avenue where we have outstanding resos about improving pedestrian experiences at various crosswalks up and down First Avenue. So I'm really eager to see what Councilmember Menon has regarding that as well, so that we can overlap and join our forces. Okay, as far as updating things, we are with the Land Use Committee also cooperating with the Licensing Committee about the open restaurants program. That reso was initially predicted, the draft reso that Anton did was initially produced, shown at our committee meeting on Monday as well. So we didn't have that much time to discuss it. We'll be discussing it more in depth next month. And then after we and land use weigh in, I guess Anton will be presenting a resolution to the full board, possibly in April, possibly in May. It depends on how the discussions go, 3 committees. It can be a little complicated. The NYU bus stop has already been moved. DOT did it, not quite in the dead of night, but they did it without telling anyone, including NYU. So it's now where it's going to be for the next 3 years or so. Right now, that's a better place because it is right in front of the main entrance. Committee members seem satisfied with NYU's presentation about how they had the setup working around there. So we'll be monitoring it as it goes along, obviously, to see what's happening and stay on top of the situation. A lot of our other DOT products are, I wouldn't say, they're floating in the water. They're not dead in the water because of city government changes, new commissioners, work shortages, winter. They're starting their milling and paving season. They have a lot of reasons why they're not following up on some of the things that we've called for. So we will be going through our past resos for the last year or so and trying to highlight and foreground things that we've asked for that haven't been fulfilled yet and get them back on track about that sort of stuff. Lastly, one of the things we have to get back on track on is about street co-namings. I've mentioned before that we have a task force. Brian Van Neuenhoven is in fact the guy on point for that. So I drafted a draft reso that was in conformity with what a lot of the community boards in Manhattan and nearby Brooklyn are doing to require, as far as requirements go for street co-namings. That was, I gave to Brian and the task force. It's not a prescriptive document. They're free to pull out, put in whatever it is that they want, which we'll be discussing at the committee meeting following that. But what I want to urge full board members to do is to take a look at that draft. I believe the office sent it out to everybody. If they haven't, they can. And if there are things you feel strongly about in terms of the co-naming process, please make them known to Brian before the committee meeting, because we'd rather have this done by the task force, have the data crunched and coordinated, and then present it to the committee so that we can discuss it in some coherent way. So please do that if you have feelings about that, like I say, because we'll be looking at that at in the April meeting as well. And I think that's really about it.
All right, thank you. I see we have a question from Michael. Michael, go ahead.
Thank you, Kyle. I just have a quick question. Is there a way of getting the DOT to agree to allow community boards or residents to have more input when they change traffic patterns, parking, bike lanes, and things like that?
I'm open to any suggestions. We have a fairly good relationship with DOT in terms of they have respect for this board and how its process and protocols work. But that doesn't mean that they do what we ask. And since we are an advisory body, we're not a legislative body that way. We have no enforcement powers. We can simply advise. So the short answer to your question is unfortunately no. We're an advisory body. We do what we can, and we depend on the relationships we have with the agencies and their respect for us to help them move along in terms of the things we ask and prioritize them. So, but other than that, it's simply the power of persuasion and the fact that the community wants it, depending on what the project is, that can have various weights. So that's the sort of longest short answer.
Thank you, Gene. I appreciate that.
Sure.
All right, seeing no further questions, thank you very much, Eugene.
Sure.
We'll now move on to business affairs and licensing. Claire?
Hello again, everyone. I see Sandra has its hand up, so I'll call on.
Yep, Sandra.
Yeah, sorry. Before we go into the actual vote, I mean, I just noticed when I was reviewing the Turkish cuisine resolution in the preamble, it mentions there is a change, but the resolution fails to actually mention why they came before the board. The nature of the change, I think that just needs to be added, but otherwise I have no objection to it.
Okay, so we can amend that to include a specific sentence about what the class changes.
Sounds good. I also just want to add, as you all can see and might remember, we asked the water club to come last month and they didn't show up. So we did pass a resolution objecting their renewal. They did join us last month and responded to our questions that we had. So we are updating the resolution, as you can see in 3C. And I would encourage all board members to keep their eyes out on the water club and let me know if there are any issues with their operations. But other than that, those are the 3 applicants we had. And if no one else has any questions, I think we can vote on them.
Yep. Is there a motion to bundle?
Motion to bundle.
And is that seconded by Sandy?
I actually just wanted to pull out the water club.
Okay.
No worries.
Okay, so motion to bundle A and B. Are there any objections to that? All right, seeing none, is there a call to question?
I'll call the question.
All right, by Sandy, is that seconded?
I'll second.
Seconded by Anton. Thank you. Everybody, please go back to their digital ballot and mark your votes for 3A and 3B. And once you have marked your votes for that, please do not hit submit. And for those of you who are not using the digital ballot, we will ask for your vote verbally during the second roll call. All right, and now we'll move on to 3C. Sandy, do you want to ask a question or point of clarification? Sandy, go ahead.
Yes, actually, right after the meeting that the water club attended, someone took a photograph that actually notes that outside the water club, it says private events. And that seems to contradict exactly what they said in the meeting. So I understand that we're trying to, in the reso, it does suggest that they are, if they are not open to the public, there's a way to actually, I guess, make a complaint about that. But it just seems counterintuitive that they would say one thing at the meeting and then the next day there's a sign that says private events.
Thank you for that, Sandy. Kevin, do you have a question or?
I just wanted to underline what Sandy said. There was a feeling they may have been giving us lip service.
Mm-hmm.
I specifically asked them if it will always be open to the public. And they said, well, yes, because it has to be. Well, it doesn't have to be. So again, I feel like there's always cloudiness with the water club. So.
Okay, thank you. Seema, go ahead.
I just wanted to ask Sandy, did it say like open to private events or did it say private events only?
Actually, I forwarded the photograph to Claire as well. It said private events. It used to say restaurant. They covered it with private events.
Okay, just to imply that it's like only private events, because any restaurant can say that it can also host private events. So I just wanted to be clear that it's, it's what it's suggesting is that it only does private events.
That was my interpretation of it. Oh, here we go.
Yeah, you could tell that it obviously used to say restaurant or something that started with R, and now that's covered, and it says private events. So I think that I talked to Sandy about this, but I do think that, the board, with this in mind, can vote how you all choose to vote. But I think the office also will definitely be following up with the water club about this signage. Jim?
That was a similar view of what I had. It just seems to me that may be a temporary sign for a private event as opposed to private events exclusively. Lots of restaurants close up when they have a private event. It's not unusual at all. And that in having the sign up for traffic that comes by and people parking their cars, it kind of just alerts them that we're only doing private events this evening. So I would clarify I don't know if Buzzy O'Keefe is still running that place or not, or if he's passed on or what, but I would ask what's happening with the management and just get clarification.
Yeah, so I think that was part of the conversation is what we're getting from this, and maybe they should have had a bigger sign.
Yeah, that's true.
All right, let's go to Anton and then Sandro, and let's wrap up on this particular resolution. Anton, you're muted.
Sorry. I'm looking at their webpage now. It says private events, wedding venue, outdoor terrace, piano, bridal suite, fireplace, catering, valet parking. That means to me, if I was reading it as a layperson, that this is an event place, not a public restaurant. So either they clarify this, or I have an issue if they're saying one thing and doing another thing or advertising another thing.
Okay, thank you, Anton. And Sandro, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, I just wanted to clarify real quickly to Jim's point. The sign is nailed onto the wood. I've never, and having family members who actually manage and own restaurants, I can tell you, no one would actually nail a private event sign on for a single evening or a couple of evenings. They're clearly modifying the original sign, but not actually replacing it. And maybe that's forthcoming.
Thank you. And I just want to clarify, because this is a resolution of no objection to their application. Was all of this information found out after their presentation to the committee? And out of curiosity, if you can answer this or not, would the committee have voted differently had that information been known to the committee at the time?
Yeah, we didn't know of that sign until after the committee meeting. I think that, I will say I wasn't really impressed by their engagement with us. They showed up, which I guess is half the battle, but, there wasn't really like apologies or like understanding the severity of missing a meeting that you're invited to. So I can't really speak to how the board would have voted had they known, or the committee would have voted had they known of this sign, but I think that I would be less inclined to pass a resolution of no objection had I known that they had a wooden sign saying private events.
Okay. All right. Is there any call to question on this? Rich?
Yeah, I just wanted to note that their website promotes them only as an event venue, and very prominently as an event venue, and not as a restaurant at all.
Okay, thank you. Jim?
This may be a consequence of them reopening out of the pandemic, and they may have plans to open as a regular restaurant. I always love the place. So,
that is fair enough.
yeah, so I really don't know. I think the only way to truly resolve this is to speak with management and find out exactly why we see these inconsistencies. Open Table also lists them as closed. So
Thank you. B? Sorry, you're on mute.
And Buzzy, by the way, has always had issues with the community board. That's why I asked if he was still in management.
Thank you. B, go ahead. B, I think you're still on mute. Okay, I think B dropped
I think
off.
that I unmute now.
Oh, there you are.
Yeah, boy, this is giving me trouble today. I was going to offer a recommendation that we send this back to committee because we're voting on something that information came back afterwards. And I'm not comfortable voting on something that the committee didn't have the full information and just based on the discussion. You have already a resolution out there when they didn't come. I would let that stand and try to resolve this.
Okay. Larry?
I'll make that motion to send it back to committee.
Second.
Okay, seconded by Jim. Can everybody put their hands down, please? Because we'll have to take a vote on this.
I actually wanted to say one more thing.
Okay, can you, yeah.
Just to Jim, yes, Buzzy O'Keefe, no relation, is definitely in charge. He sent his one of his attorneys. I clearly asked his attorney, it's on Zoom. Will this always be open to the general public? If you get the liquor license, he said it will always be open to the general public at all open hours. So it does seem in contradiction somewhat.
Okay.
So I will just add that they didn't say that it would happen tomorrow. They said that they were regaining their staff and like sorting it out. So it wasn't like an immediate promise, but you are right, Kevin. In ways.
So it's not necessarily that you didn't speak with management about it, it's just that they shared inaccurate information. Okay. All right, Paige, could you put your hand down because we have to take a vote on sending it back to committee? Can we get her hand down? All right. So all of those in favor of returning this resolution back to the committee, please raise your hand. And can the board office take a count? All right, and please keep them up. And if you've made your decision, please keep it up.
I count 28 hands up, which is the
I do as
majority
well.
of board
I do
members.
as well.
Sorry, Brendan, could you repeat that? Someone was speaking.
I said that I count 28 board members' hands up, which is the majority of board members.
Okay, so we'll return that back to the committee. And how should we put this on the ballot?
Anyone on the ballot, just vote however you want. We have made note of this. We will fix it on the back end after all the ballots have been submitted. So just vote however you want. It won't be counted.
All right.
Just on information, if I may, what's the difference whether it's a public event or a public space or a private space insofar as the liquor license is concerned? I'm not familiar with the liquor license rules. That's why I'm asking.
Yeah, so an on-premises license states that the establishment is going to be open to the public. Anyone who wants to walk in and get a beverage or an appetizer during their opening hours, they're welcome to, but as it seems like they're operating now.
No, I understand. Yeah, all right. No, but event spaces require a liquor license as well, right?
Yes, but they present themselves as an event space to us that will be having isolated events as opposed to a restaurant that has established hours of operation.
And there's a difference between the two for event spaces versus restaurants on the liquor licenses?
You can't walk into an event space.
No,
and
not
expect
obviously.
a Corona beer
I mean
served
with
to
respect
you.
to the license itself.
Well, yeah, so Jim, it could be essentially like you could technically operate a nightclub, right? Because you could have an event space where you have invites only, have a DJ, play till 4 a.m., although you presented yourself as a restaurant or dining establishment. And we've had issues with similar establishments in the past where we actually did not renew their license for a similar reason.
Okay, I'm just curious.
Okay, so now that we're done resolutions, Claire, do you have a committee report?
You know, I think everyone knows by now, the vaccine mandate to eat indoors has been lifted. So now anyone can eat inside despite their vaccination status. It is wonderful that Manhattan has a high vaccine rate, but it's a little concerning about folks from elsewhere coming in. So I think that you all knew that by now, but just wanted to remind you that that started on Monday. I also want to thank Anton for working tirelessly on the open restaurants resolution and collaborating with both land use and transportation. If it's okay, I would like to hand it over to Anton to see if he has anything to say. If not, these conversations are ongoing, and I would encourage folks to join any of the 3 committee meetings if there is something to say. But Anton, do you have a brief summary that you want to share? Oh, you just muted yourself, so.
I spoke to the other committees and they gave me some very good ideas and we had some good discussions. I'm trying to work that into another draft resolution and we'll do another go around and hopefully a couple of months from now, we'll have something that we can present as a resolution from the whole board.
Thank you. And thanks again, Anton, for your work on this. Larry, do you have a question?
Well, it's more in the way of a comment, an observation that when the mandates were lifted, the mayor said that if an establishment for the protection of its workers and its patrons would like to continue a vaccine requirement, they're free to do so. That has been lost in the shuffle. And perhaps that we as a board could assist those venues because they think it's essential for their survival, physical survival, health-wise, that people who, like myself, would feel more comfortable knowing who I was sitting next to when I took my mask off, that they'd have an opportunity to better publicize this as a feature.
Yeah, we can definitely think about ways to reach out to establishments to remind them that they can still require proof of vaccines. That's a good idea. Thanks.
And also see how that might be publicized again. Putting the restaurant in a positive light rather than a negative.
Definitely. Thank you. Lou?
I'd have appreciated if the chair would note that on the motion to refer, I abstained for cause. And I'm ineligible to vote on that resolution.
Okay.
Noted. But yeah, that really sums up what's been going on. Thank you, everyone.
All right, thank you, Claire. And seeing no further questions, we'll move on to the next committee. So Sandy with Land Use and Waterfront.
Yes, thank you. Again, I also want to thank Anton for a very fast turnaround for a resolution addressing the open streets issues and or open restaurant issues. And it's open for more discussion, certainly. We've been asking for an update on the racial impact study from the Public Advocate's Office. And actually, in the meantime, the City Planning Department has put together a way to analyze impact. And they're looking for input on that. I think they probably will be coming to us in the next few months with an explanation of how the process works. We're also, as mentioned, going to be talking to Solar One and the EDC and the DDC and looking at how to use the space under the FDR and how to support Solar One in their discussions with the EDC and the DDC. And that's it. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you, Sandy. Are there any questions for the Land Use Committee? I see one from Seema. Go ahead.
Hey, Sandy, could you tell me a little bit more about that racial equity study? Because I think that's like the new commission that Matt Roberts and I were looking at, and as it related to public safety. And I knew that they had appointed someone and there was a task force around racial equity established, but I didn't know that they had put forward a study. So potentially, again, not knowing the content, I'm curious if you think it might make sense for us to look at it together with our two committees.
This is actually in terms of zoning and land use. So it's very specific, and it's the zoning. It wasn't a local law that was advocated by the public advocate and put in place. And so it's looking at racial equity whenever there is a rezoning or a change in use. It's very, I can forward the information to you, but I think it is a different, a slightly different process that we're talking about.
Okay, yeah, I'd love to just take a look at it if you don't mind, but thank you for clarifying.
Absolutely. It's still in beta or whatever they call it, beta, but I will pass on what I have.
All right, seeing no further questions, we'll move on to housing and homelessness. Rich?
Yep. In the interest of time, I'm going to waive my report because we don't have much to say. I'll take any questions if anyone has any.
All right, seeing no questions for you, Rich, appreciate it. We'll move on to youth and education. John?
Yeah, thank you, Kyle. It is getting late, but I do want to frame this resolution. We spent 2 committee meetings discussing the issue and the resolution in some detail. And we had an earlier speaker, Ms. Smalley, I believe, who spoke quite eloquently, though perhaps going over her time, of the impact of the non-continuation of not getting funding parity for private schools serving children with learning challenges for her family, and that the school that she is currently sending her kid to is planning to go private with a tuition of $69,000 or so a year. I'm not sure what the exact amount is. So this resolution basically follows up on 2 pieces of legislation that were before the State Assembly and State Senate, the Assembly Bill A8013 and Senate Bill 06516A, both of which passed the Assembly and Senate unanimously to put the funding parity, to establish funding parity for the 853 schools. Right now, their funding increases 4% a year, and other public schools increases 7%. I'm cutting a lot to the chase here. The governor vetoed that despite the unanimous vote. And in fairness to the governor, she did not veto it because she's opposed to helping these schools. She simply feels it should be part of the executive budget worked through NYSED, and so therefore she vetoed it while giving it a one-time increase. The problem is that these schools do not have a reliable continuing source of funding, which is what they need to be able to competitively hire teachers. There's about a $15,000 wage gap between what these schools can afford to pay a teacher, and what public schools, other publicly funded schools can. So after some discussion in our committee, we have two resolves here. The first acknowledges that the governor does have good intentions here, and we urge the governor and the leadership of the State Assembly and Senate urgently to resolve their differences related to the appropriate funding mechanisms for these schools. But at the same time, we are urging the Senate and Assembly to reintroduce legislation similar to the legislation that was passed unanimously and vetoed. And that's simply sending a message to the executive branch that our community board and hopefully others will be keeping an eye on this and do not want to see this vetoed again, but rather want the governor and the executive and legislative branches to come to some resolution of this, because to the families that it affects, this is really critical. These are families that cannot afford, if these schools start going private because they can't pay their teachers, on a comparable basis. These are families that will be, left in a fairly bad situation. I'm going to stop there because it's almost 9:30 and we've been meeting for a while. But basically, this resolution urges the governor and the legislature to come together on this, which they've all unanimously agreed on, and resolve this issue in a timely manner, and sends them the message that we're going to keep an eye on this if it doesn't get addressed. And NICET itself, by the way, is on the record as supporting it. So we have everybody, all parties supporting it. This is simply getting them to talk about the right way of putting this forward. So I'll stop there.
Great, thank you, John. Are there any questions about this resolution 6A? All right, seeing none, is there a call to question?
I can't
call a question.
Okay.
Sorry, who's that?
Mark.
Mark, all right, is that seconded by anyone? Abby?
I second, yes.
Thank you. All right, so all of those, please go to your digital ballot and mark your vote for 6A.
And while the people are voting, I will make a brief report. We've started a process of collaboration with Community Board 5. They're very eager to work with us. And it was suggested at our last meeting that we start addressing issues related to the arts. By coincidence, Community Board 5 has the Ballet Tech, which is the only school in the public schools in New York City that is devoted to ballet. So we're perhaps going to be, they're very eager to look at ways we could help and support them. In a broader sense, I was at a meeting last night with in Zoom with Chancellor Banks, and he raised again the issue of school buses and putting GPS on school buses, and indirectly raised former Councilmember Kalos's push to get cameras on the stop signs that go out when the school buses stop. So we will be taking a look. This is high on the priority list of our new chancellor, and we will be putting this on our next meeting's agenda. We also had a very good discussion, which will be a presentation from school food at our last meeting, and that we will have put in the CB6 on the CB6 website, which it hasn't already been put there. But we had a very good discussion and questions that we are directing now through the superintendent of District 2 to the DOE on the content of some of the food that our kids get, with sugar and other things in it that maybe we all wouldn't want our kids having all the time. So I'm going to stop there with my report. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
We'll go and vote now.
All right, any questions for John and Youth and Education? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to Budget and Governmental Affairs. Rishma?
Thank you, Kyle.
So our committee meeting for this month has not happened yet. It will happen next week. Since the last full board meeting, we have gotten a response from OMB on our budget request. And as Jesus pointed out earlier this evening, it has been updated in the Airtable, which is available on our website, as well as it has been emailed around to all the committee chairs to take a look at. I've also sent around the text that we've included in our community needs statement to all the committee chairs. And so if people can review that, I know some of the committees have already spoken to me and they have already started to take a look at how they may want to alter their requests for next year. In our meeting next week, we're going to be discussing the response that we got from OMB to our budget requests, as well as we're going to be talking about legislation that is currently in the state Senate and state assembly for what's called wrong church ballots, which are ballots that were submitted were people who were registered to vote, but they went to the wrong election district. And there's legislation to make it easier for people to vote. And that's it.
All right. Thank you very much, Reshma. And seeing no questions for you, we'll move on to the next committee, Environment and Parks. Kevin?
Thanks, Kyle. To help keep this report brief, I will touch on only one of the several agenda items at last Tuesday's committee meeting. We addressed the possible closure of the Grand Central Library branch on East 46th Street, because we heard that the branch may be permanently shut after its current lease expires this year. I reached out before the meeting to a New York Public Library government affairs official. That official reported the Grand Central Library was, quote, always intended to be a temporary location with limited services to supplement the 53rd Street Library during construction. It remained a temporary location even after 53rd Street was completed, unquote. The official further noted that the temporary status was extended because of the construction of the formerly named Mid-Manhattan Library. He added that with that and the 53rd Street locations now open, the library system is, quote, evaluating the lease at Grand Central. A determination has not been made yet as to whether or not to renew this lease. Once a final decision is made, we will conduct outreach with the board, unquote. Now, after a committee discussion, we reported that our committee vice chair, Jeannie D'Onofrio, will be the point person on this issue for the committee going forward, including further research. We agreed that the library will be an agenda item again next month. We addressed the probability of a resolution. We agreed that after further research, a committee resolution may happen next month. And I noted earlier at the prelude to tonight's meeting, Ann Seligman mentioned what sounded like a possible research development. If Ann or anyone else has any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them.
Ann, go ahead.
Yeah, apparently Keith Power's office had a meeting with them, with the library, and they said, oh yeah, we're going to start closing in October. And it's very much exactly what I feared, is that they it's a done decision, and they basically did not engage the community in this at all. And it's frustrating because the numbers that they have sent us show that it is pretty much the most popular. Like, there's a couple of different metrics, but it's certainly been a very popular library in the district. So that I hope, kind of despite that news, you know, we're not going to take that and just like give up. And so, like I said, I'm working on it. We have different contacts, and hearing, again, one of the things that's so frustrating for an organization that I have respected my entire life, to feel like we're getting kind of jerked around and getting different answers from different people is very frustrating. They should be doing sort of an honest engagement.
Yeah, again, I thank you for that, and I think it's worth just rereading, especially since I may have bumbled it, because this is what they put in writing again. I'll read two sentences. A determination has not been made yet as to whether or not to renew this lease. Once a final decision is made, we will conduct outreach with the board. This is from the Associate Director of Government Affairs to the New York Public Library.
Well, I don't have that email open right now, but there was an email from Patrick Hill saying almost exactly the opposite, like saying, yes, this is decided and it's October. And I just got this, I think yesterday, which makes it pretty embarrassing that it's lost in my inbox, but.
So this will be an issue that will continue, obviously, and Kevin, please continue to CC me on all of that stuff, because we might have to, do a letter or something to that effect. So once we get that resolution passed and everything, we can do something more official.
Thank you.
All right. So seeing no further questions, we'll now move on to Health and Human Services.
I read my report.
All right. Thank you very much, Elvie. Are there any questions for Health and Human Services? All right. Seeing none, thank you very much. And we'll now move on to Public Safety. Matt?
All right. I know we're running late here, but thanks to everybody who participated in last month's meeting with the District Attorney's Office. I know we had good response from the general public on that, some good information as well. And some things we'll be following up on in the months ahead. So do check that out if you missed it and you're interested. As far as other items go, I know the 13th precinct is working on that crossing guard request at 20th Street and First Avenue. They're still looking to hire somebody. So if anybody on this call knows of anybody that might be interested, please apply for that. They are looking to place someone there as soon as they can hire someone. Crime across the board, across both of the precincts in this district are up about 20%. I'm not going to go into details there, but you can get details at your local precinct meetings. I will touch on the shooting that occurred early Saturday morning on First Avenue and 42nd Street. Still some preliminary, it's preliminary investigation, but basically an individual was highly intoxicated walking home. A vehicle was driving by. They saw the victim as an easy target for robbery, and that escalated into a shooting. So that's about all I can say right now on that incident. And this was early Saturday morning, about 2-3 in the morning on First Avenue, 42nd Street. So with that, there'll be no public safety meeting this month due to the St. Patrick's Day holiday, and we'll pick things up.
All right. Thank you very much, Matt. Are there any questions for Matt in the Public Safety Committee? All right. Seeing none, if you haven't already submitted your ballot, please do that now. And we're now up to old or new business. So board members, if you have any old or new business to state, please raise your hand through Zoom. Jim, go ahead.
Just on new business, I'm circulating a letter in the chat, or not a letter, but an article in the chat about how the governor and the mayor have come together to agree to change the Midtown area so that residential development can happen there in the old office buildings. And I think perhaps it might be worthwhile for a joint committee meeting of budget and of land use at some point, because so much of the city's revenue comes from real estate, and with between congestion pricing and $5 a gallon gasoline and a lot of other issues, I think we'll be looking at a dearth of Midtown businesses returning to normal, and that there'll be a exodus of business operations in Midtown that'll have serious budget effects, and obviously there are zoning considerations as well. So I'm posting that piece right up now.
All right. Thank you very much, Jim. Appreciate it. Right, anyone else with old or new business? All right, seeing none, we'll now proceed to the second roll call.
Okay, starting from the bottom. Claude Winfield,
Present.
Ronnie White,
Present.
Maura Wong,
Present.
Brian Van Nieuwenhoven,
Present.
Corinne Vanderdonk. Corinne,
Present.
thank you. Mark Thompson,
Present.
Anju Suresh,
Present.
Susan Steinberg,
Present.
Letty Simon,
Present.
Sandro Sherrod,
Present.
Sean Sherman,
Present.
thanks. Seema Shah,
Present.
Lou Sapersky,
Yo,
Ann Seligman,
Present.
Lawrence Shayer,
Present.
Gene Santoro. Gene? Matt Roberts.
Still here.
Thank you, Matt. Reshma Patel.
Present.
Stephen O.
Present.
Kevin O'Keefe.
Present.
Rajesh Nayar.
Present.
Richard Mintz.
Present.
Sandra McKee.
Present.
Letha Matthew.
Present.
Anton Malner.
Present.
Sandra Leftoff.
Present.
Abigail Cruzmark.
Present.
John Keller.
Present.
Paige Judge.
Present. Present.
I got you, Paige. Thank you. Molly Hollister. Okay, right. Adam Harkey. Andrew Gross. Eric Goldberg. Charles Fernandez.
Present.
Jeannie D'Onofrio.
Present.
E. Disman.
Present.
Daniel Devine. Dan Devine. Okay, Stuart Desser.
Present.
Jim Collins.
Here.
Claire Brennan.
Present.
Claire. LV Barroso.
I'm here. Claire's
Present.
here.
Okay, thank you, LV. Martin Barrett. Neil Barkley. Neil.
Present.
Thanks, Neil. Asya Badi and Kyla Thide.
Present.
Okay,
Did you say Mike Devereaux?
I may have, I don't recall, but I'll mark you present. Thank you, Michael.
Thanks, Pat.
Of course.
Also, Dan and Neil, don't forget to submit your ballots.
And Brendan, if you let me know when it's
Submitted.
time, I can read some results there.
Thank you. Just waiting on Dan. I'm not hearing anything though.
Are you waiting on Dan Devine?
Yep, just that ballot.
Sorry, I'll submit it right now.
Thanks. We have all other ballots.
Okay, great. So transportation 2A.
Wait, just a moment. Just a moment. Dan still needs to submit his ballot.
Okay.
So just, I'll let you know when it's submitted. Or he'll let you know.
I changed mine to 6 o'clock.
Okay, we're good.
All right, so transportation 2A, 40 in favor, no opposed, no abstentions, and 1 not entitled. Business affairs and licensing, 3A, 41 in favor, 0 opposed, 0 abstentions, no non-titles. 3B, 41 in favor, 0 opposed, 0 abstentions, 0 non-entitled. 3C, 13 in favor, 16 opposed, 7 abstentions, and 5 not entitled.
Just a reminder that was sent back to committee, so those votes will be purged.
Okay, good. Thank you. Youth and Education 6A, 41 in favor, 0 opposed, 0 abstentions, and no not entitled. And that concludes the reading of the votes.
All right, thank you, Matt. If there are no objections, we will adjourn the meeting. Seeing no further business.